everyone, and a warm welcome to all. The past 4 months have taught us some valuable lessons, and one of the most important of these has been to learn to accept change. Organizations across sizes and sectors have seen tremendous shift in business landscape. And while most large organizations adopted a slew of digital technologies like cloud-based tools and remote working solutions to maintain continuity, many SMBs have failed to do so. SMBs often lack the knowledge and resources to identify and adopt the digital tools that could improve their productivity. And without the right guidance, SMBs can find themselves vulnerable to data breaches, hackers, and poor productivity. With today's panel discussion, how SMBs can adopt digital as a new normal in the post-COVID era, industry leaders will provide insights and help understand the challenges SMBs face while adopting digital solutions and the possible solutions that can enhance the productivity and security of their operations. Through this discussion, we will try and understand how SMBs can benefit from adopting digital solutions, definitely, how exactly it will cut expenses, streamline operations, and future-proof their business. So without taking much more time, let me just quickly introduce our esteemed panel today. I would like to introduce our first panelist, Mr. Amit Doshi, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at Lenovo India. He leads the marketing activities for Lenovo India's business segments, which are customer, consumer, commercial, SMB, and tablets, and has deep experience in working with the SMB sector and understanding their needs. Welcome, Amit. I would also like to introduce Rohan Verma, CEO and Executive Director, MapmyIndia, whose offerings include geospatial solutions such as GPS navigation systems, advanced maps and APIs, and GPS IoT devices, among others. Rohan is currently driving corporate strategy and growth, sales, product and technology, and other aspects at MapmyIndia. Welcome, Rohan. We also have Akshat Birla, founder and CEO of Finovate Capital, a fintech platform that is providing working capital to MSMEs and SMEs with advanced digital underwriting capabilities. Akshat has worked in the banking sector with Credit Suisse and fintech sectors with Samsung, where he was involved with the launch of Samsung Pay in India. Welcome, Akshat.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for taking time to join us today. Amit, if I may begin with you, while the exponential adoption of digital tools and systems by organizations is a key change seen in the COVID-19 pandemic, another crucial aspect has been the evolving dynamics between customers and businesses. How do you see increased digital adoption by customers impact business models of SMBs in the future?
Hey, hi, Dipti, and it's great to be here today. If you look at, see, one of the things I feel that the pandemic has brought to the fore has removed really the barriers that were there in customers opting for digital experiences. And this is not just limited to commerce. It is also perhaps now extending to how do they want to spend time on digital, even in the pre-purchase part of the journey. So if you look at, any category, the decision journey really has three parts. There is a pre-purchase part, there is a purchase experience, and then there is post-purchase. And what we had started to see with e-commerce was acceleration in the purchase part of the journey. And I'm not just talking about e-commerce players like Amazon and Flipkart, but also other service providers who were making their products and services accessible through digital platforms. But what has really changed is the pre-purchase part of the journey. And the pre-purchase part of the journey is different and distinct and has nuances by different businesses and categories. But that would really change going forward. Simple things that I feel we've experienced. One of the things you would do is if you were to, let's say, visit a store, the most natural thing would have been to plan it as part of a family shopping trip over the weekend, drop by and an experience. But today, consumers or customers, as the case may be, would like to research a lot more. They would like to know where the store is, what the timings are, is there parking, what are the right times to drop by, is the place safe? And that's just one example. The other example could be that people would spend far more time on the internet researching, comparing products. In India, we know for a fact that people do research far more intensely. They're far more value conscious than the rest of the world. But going forward, I think that is just going to propel. And therefore, it would be extremely important for all businesses to be very, very clear about what are those touch points in the pre-purchase part of the journey, where the customer is likely to find out more about that category and to show up and bring their best form. So that's really one part in how things are going to really accelerate. And one is seeing it not just in digital savvy audiences, but even audiences who preferred to stay away from the mode, now wanting to engage in digital formats. So I think it's going to remove those barriers. And as people sample digital for the first time, they will realize that it is not as complicated or complex that they thought it might have been. So it is about trial, and then that ease leading to forming a habit. If I look at and spend maybe a minute on the post-purchase part of the journey, even in our business, we've seen that in the last few days, traditionally people would, if let's say they had a challenge that they wanted resolved with a service or a tech support requirement, they would have called up or walked into a service center. And if, let's say, there was something that they needed to know more, then they would have gone to social media. What we're realizing is that today, even at the first instance, they're raising their requirement or their ticket on social media. So we're also seeing some of that traffic move from traditional forms to digital forms. So that I would say, Dipti, is really the imperative for all businesses to look at their decision journey comprehensively, see where is it that customers want interaction or information or knowledge or support, and find out are there digital alternatives that people have already started using, and make yourself equipped for that.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Rohan, with remote working being a novel concept for most SMBs, I mean, for us, we have, taken to it like, a fish to water, so to speak. A lot of IT companies, a lot of people digital savvy, it hasn't been an issue working from home, but for most SMBs, that's a very alien concept. What immediate challenges are they facing in successfully working remotely right now? What are you seeing?
I think a few things from our perspective. One is what we understand about customers. One is just knowing where their employees are coming from. Are they coming from containment zones and so on and so forth? That is kind of one worry. The second is where the goods are being delivered to them from. Are those coming from containment zones? How do they communicate to their consumers that they are in or not in a containment zone? This is kind of, in this current pandemic, that has become kind of a interesting kind of insight or interesting kind of need. The other is, if it's in the logistics domain, then remotely monitoring their vehicles, remotely monitoring their shipments, because it's become almost mandatory to digitize every process. Because you can't really be in the office and like keep talking to others. Where is this good? Where is that? So on and so forth. So from our perspective, this whole hyper-local, real-time location, digital intelligence, we are seeing both large organizations as well as small needing to adopt it, and the large organizations forcing the small and medium business owners, or the consumers forcing the small and medium business owners to digitize. So yeah, that's from my perspective.
What about, Rohan, in your organization? How have you dealt with these challenges of, not only work from home, but business continuity? And look, since March, what has been going on in your organization?
Yeah, so we are about 1,000 people, and I think the first thing kind of that we had to grapple with is we're used to kind of co-creating together, being in office together. It's a pretty creative, deep tech organization which thrives in face-to-face meetings and brainstorming. So we had to kind of rely on the digital communication tools significantly and really structure meetings in a scheduled manner, so that every day different teams were reviewing different items. And so there was a cadence, which earlier you could just walk around. It's called management by walking around. You can't do that. So you kind of have to do management by scheduling almost. But that discipline really drives a lot of agility also. We've had to, of course, geocode or location tag each of our employees so that we can alert them if they are in or near a containment zone. That is something that we did. And in terms of business continuity, yeah, really ensuring that our systems were on the cloud has been really helpful for us. We've had to support our customers who are in the logistics and mobility space, and automotive space, which went through a washout almost in April and May. So it's been challenging. We've also seen a lot of customers adopt these safety analytics, digitized solutions. Large FMCG companies ask their retailers to leverage it. So it's been a mixed bag. Overall, of course, I don't think anybody would have wanted Corona. But in the Corona pandemic, this is how different organizations, us included, have responded. We've kept ourselves busy by solving problems that people are facing so that we have a mission to focus on and don't get too despondent.
Yeah. So we'll come back to something more, I think, from whatever you just shared. There are a couple of questions that came out. I'll just, as we go into the discussion, we'll come back. Akshat, I'll come to you. Given that organizations in the post-COVID world have had to rethink their security strategies overnight, what are the pitfalls that SMBs seeking to go digital must avoid?
Yeah. So, I mean, just taking a very overall stab, right? I mean, the whole COVID scenario has completely reset the way SMBs have been doing business. They've been used to a certain way of doing business, used to a very physical way of doing business, a very paper-oriented, and as Rohan mentioned, I mean, very little of it was on cloud or on these online systems. So it's been a big shock for these guys, right? And across the board, when we talk to our customers, I mean, a very simple example of somebody who was in the midst of getting a loan from us in terms of working capital, and essentially come lockdown, we asked them for documentation, and they said they can't give me the documentation. I said, why, don't you have access to your computer? He said, I have access to my computer, but it's in my file in the office, right? I said, don't you have in your financials on basically digital format? He said, nahi sir, kaun rakhta hai wo? Right? I mean, which completely, was the starting for a whole new era for us, right? I mean, in terms of what we are dealing with. So, and security is no different, right? I mean, from your question perspective, because all these organizations thought of security from a four-wall perspective. I mean, they essentially looked at security from a perspective that, right, my cabinets are here, my physical files are here, my server is here in this room. As long as I sort of prevent any access to this outside of this room, keep the lock and key with me and a very trusted guy. I mean, that's security for them, right? And BCP, for that matter, was very similar, right? I mean, at the end of the day, BCP was on paper, whatever fiduciary requirement was, but never really tested out, even if it was there on paper, right? So those have been the predominant challenges, in my opinion, in terms of security, right? So what's completely been the change for these guys is, one, they've had to go online. They've had to sort of arrange for laptops and mobile access and putting everything on cloud, system access on cloud. And essentially on top of that, secure all of that, right? Secure not just their own network infrastructure, but also the devices that are using all these, or which are the access points. So it could be a laptop, could be a mobile, and these could be shared laptops with people sort of using, there's the kids using it for homeschooling and then so on and so forth, right? So that's been the biggest thing there. Right. So from that perspective, I mean, security is a very, very important piece. I'll give you another example, right? So we had an auto ancillary company that we were working with, and essentially right before lockdown, I mean, these guys had the foresight to start, distributing work. which was great to them because they are a very traditional organization, right? But what happened was, because of that, we were, even before lockdown hit, they were hit by a complete malware attack or a ransomware attack on their organization. And again, our work with them completely shut shop because they're like, we have no access to our system. We are really grappling. It took them at least 2 weeks and a lot of sort of downtime on production because they're basically a factory where they're sort of producing things. So that attack was a real eye opener for them because again, they had never had any remote access and they were just enabling this in March, right when the pandemic was about to hit. So again, that's a great example of why security becomes very important. So, and you asked about pitfalls, right? So like security, while it's very important and you need to get some good security in depending on what your case is, it doesn't need to be very complex, right? It's also a lot about common sense at the end of the day. Educating your employees on basic principles of cybersecurity, not to access sort of emails from unknown email addresses, not to click on links, not there are a bunch of these things which are common sense, which you can easily sort of train your employees on, right? Not to sort of share your passwords and access to the system. So all of that, right? That's in our opinion one of the biggest pitfalls that companies do or don't do, right? They think that cybersecurity is very complex and we need to sort of get in super high-end consultants to get this done, but a lot of it can be done and to reduce the probability of these threats, right? So, and also, one of the big pitfalls I've seen is from a tech perspective, everybody can be ready, right? They can provide their employees with laptops, mobiles, all the access that they need, Wi-Fi and all of that. But at the end of the day, culturally, have they sort of aligned the organization to a remote only working, right? How do you do the cadence? Exactly what Rohan said, right? Management by walking. A lot of these things that organizations do, how do you ensure that you completely transition that online and get your team along with you? Because at the end of the day, culturally, I would say to the contrary. When you say we're like a fish taken to the water, I would say the employees are literally like fish out of the water right now. They just don't know what to do, right? And lastly, I'd like to touch upon BCP, right? So BCP, I couldn't stress more, right? In times like this, it's a very boring document. It's a boring plan that you do, right? It's one of the lowest things on any promoter's agenda. But come times like this, it becomes the most important thing. Have you tested your systems out? Were you ready? Or did you have business downtime? Even if you had a few weeks of downtime, that's a huge cost to you, right? So cost upfront to sort of ensure business continuity, ensuring remote planning, equipment planning, people planning, and sort of bringing that whole mindset, culture, and the whole collaboration on remotely in is very, very critical, right? Sorry for the long answer.
Not at all. It's a very insightful, especially the examples that you've given. So, Amit, coming to you, what changes in consumer behavior has Lenovo seen in these past few months, and how is Lenovo handling these issues?
So, if you look at our business is multidimensional. We have the consumer business, which is people like us, families who are buying devices for their homes. Then we have the SMB team that services customers in that segment, and then we have large accounts and global accounts where we have multi-country relationships, and we've seen very, very different dynamics in each one of them. If we let's take maybe a few seconds on the first one, which is consumers. And as we heard, Akshat, some beautiful examples there. People had just got used to smartphones and not being so aware or cognizant about computing, documentation, storage, security, any of it. And with the pandemic, they realized that they cannot sustain with their current level of infrastructure at home. In most homes, consumers had, let's say, laptops. If it was, let's say, urban homes, it would be people who have laptops from their work, and family members may use it off and on, and otherwise bulk of their communication would depend on smartphones. But suddenly they realized that the product was going to be used for work for the whole day, and therefore kids who had to then connect to schooling, how would they do that? So suddenly we saw a spurt in demand, And homes which felt it was okay to work with one computer felt the need to immediately buy more for their homes. And what was very interesting was while there was this spurt in demand, there was also this need for them to get some help online or over call lines and so on, because traditionally you would go to a store, ask a few people around before buying, and suddenly those options weren't available. So we had to really look, we had to look, think out of the box and look for options which would help them. So we started off obviously contactless deliveries. We started doing online demonstrations to people. We also started a service in this period called PC Pal, where anyone can call up, and irrespective of the brand they had in mind, they could tell us a few things about their need, and we would recommend which is the right kind of computer to buy. And then if they're interested in a Lenovo, great. If they're not, we are happy to help. Similarly, for customers who had already bought us, consumers who had bought us, we realized that they needed to be supported, because if something went down, the computer had become really the nerve center of life in that period of time. So not only did we have to perk up services, but we also realized that a lot of other brands are not able to provide timely tech support to their customers. So we in fact started again a brand neutral tech helpline, where we said, hey, even if it is a competitor brand and their customer whose laptop has gone down, we are happy to help, because we were up and running and sorted on the continuity piece. So it was really two things. One is people who were there to buy, how do we help them to buy in the simplest manner possible, in the fastest manner possible, while being away. The second is we took a slightly broader view of the category and said, are there customers who are in need for help, whether they are Lenovo customers or not, and can we extend a helping hand? As far as large accounts are concerned, like Akshat said, a lot of them were looking at business continuity. We saw it come into SMB a bit slower. The large accounts, the large customers, they were very, very clear that if they had to go remote, they had to do their business continuity right there and then. So they were very, very quick to move, and therefore employees who had desktops needed laptops, and our whole focus was to support these customers, making that business continuity happen. With the SMBs, I feel that we are now beginning to see that momentum, where I think a lot of them have realized that this is here to stay. Some of them may have hoped for it to go away in 3-4 months, and may have postponed some of these infrastructure decisions, but it's fairly clear now that they would. So we're seeing a lot of interest that is coming from SMB.
One of the things, Amit, what I wanted to check was this: the in terms of consumer behavior. Are these inquiries coming to you online, or do they call? Is there a call center? How has that changed?
Are you talking about consumers or businesses?
Yeah, consumers.
Consumers. We've certainly definitely seen an uptake. We saw an uptake in an e-commerce part of the business when the stores were shut in the lockdown. But as the stores have started to open, we have now started seeing, that balance tilt. But needless to say, e-commerce in this period did increase in contribution. And that was just purely because of access, because stores were closed and a lot of them were not able to supply. Mm-hmm. Having said that, I feel that it is not either or. It has to be a balanced growth. All of these routes to market, these channels have to play a role. And what we saw was our partner community really surprised us by the savviness that they demonstrated as far as technology was concerned. Lenovo was able to aid them, was able to support them. We've been lucky because we've been on this path to digitize the pre-purchase part of the journey and help automate even some of the purchase elements for almost a couple of years. So we were frankly fortunate, Dipti, that we were not caught, on the wrong foot, so as to say. But equally, we saw our partners being very, very savvy, including, by, let's say, starting to give demonstrations online. Now, to demonstrate a computer online is very different from being able to demonstrate something in person. But we managed to do some very quick training sessions. They were very, very quick to adopt it. And we saw that change. The second thing we saw was a lot of them being very, very conscious of hygiene and the rules that they had to follow around it. So contactless delivery became a norm for us. And the whole thing really was about, hey, is there a person who's looking for a computer right now? How can we get the details from them as soon as we can? Can we assist them in the process? And can stores do that whole operation remotely and get them a PC in the fastest manner possible, in the safest manner possible?
Mm-hmm. Akshat and Rohan, I mean, y'all can answer both because it's a very interesting question. We would like to know this, that what are the business opportunities that lie in building digital products and solutions for SMBs now, because this has thrown open, as much as it is a challenging time, it has thrown open a lot of opportunities now. So what do you see are the solutions that you can come up with right now for SMBs?
Great question, Dipti. And from my perspective, again, I mean, finance is very close to my heart. And from a financing perspective or from a financial perspective, it's phenomenal, right? The opportunities, because one of the key things that everybody has learned is, securing cash and liquidity in a time like this is very, very critical, right? When your own payments get delayed, your sales get hit, and then you have to sort of spend on all this digitization, right? And it's needed to do that, right? So it's a double whammy for all these guys, and ensuring that you have got the right finances in place is very critical for any SMB, right? So there's a great opportunity in there, Finovate is into the business of sort of helping small and medium businesses with this working capital. Right. But I mean, despite us having a fully digital way of giving loans to these MSMEs and SMBs, I mean, they need to be ready as well. So my example that I gave in the beginning, where the guy didn't have the sort of balance sheets to give me, I couldn't get him the loan, right? Everything was ready at my end, but I just couldn't give him because I couldn't look into his books, right? Moment he was able to, in 3 weeks or a month, he was able to give me those books. We were able to sort of give him the loan. Right. So even despite us having built out all these capabilities, the push was needed to digitize the SMBs. And this forcibly digitization of SMBs is going to be a boon for everybody who's involved in B2B financing, for that matter. Right. B2B financing and payments as well. So sorry for using too many examples, but one example that I really like, one of the first customers we had was still processing payments in this day and age through RTGS forms. So, making a B2B payment, while as consumers, we are very used to sort of using our mobiles. The promoter was or the basic accounting team was writing the RTGS forms. Promoter had to sign them. They had to submit them to a bank branch before a certain period of time and then get processed the next day, right? Any mistakes in them, these forms would come back and again, the process would repeat. And I was really aghast. I said, can I help you on this front, right? I mean, we can sort of digitize this for you. And it was not a priority for him. He said, Akshat, you help us on the working capital bit and you roll out the program for us. This we'll see. Karte hain baad mein. And that baad mein never came. And come the pandemic, the first call I get is from him saying, hey, Akshat, you told me about the digital payment solution. How can we get into that? Right. So, I mean, again, these solutions have been there, and then businesses that are into this will really benefit, because a lot of inefficiencies that were built into these SMBs, which were not showstoppers per se, but were clearly eating up into their time. I mean, it's no use of his time signing, 50 sheets of paper every second day, and his team to wait for him, right? I mean, these are simple examples of where digitization can come in, right from digital payments for B2B payments to even lending, for that matter, right? So from that perspective, I mean, that's a clear big theme for us. The second, I think, is when you look at SMBs, I mean, there are two aspects, right? One is their sales, one is their procurement. Procurement, I mean, is going to get very difficult, right? Anybody who's relying on high imports from the international markets is going to struggle, right? So localization of your procurement is going to happen. So if you need to find new procurement partners, there are a lot of digital avenues for you to sort of go, and there are a lot of platforms which do digital procurement, right? Connect the buyers and sellers for that matter. So those platforms will be the big beneficiaries, and of course the SMBs also will be the big beneficiaries of going onto those platforms, right? Again, from digitizing their procurement. Similarly, sales as well. I mean, selling through these aggregators, right, from e-commerce to B2B aggregators, is going to be the future, right? I mean, you just selling locally within your region, again, will not cut it when a lot of it is starting to get digitized now. So, I mean, broad themes were essentially this, and some of the other themes which will work is going to be remote working solutions, collaboration tools, cloud tools, of course, and so on and so forth.
Rohan, thanks so much, Akshat. That's quite comprehensive.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to put myself in the shoes of an SMB, and given like my narrow kind of area of expertise, being connected with people in your neighborhood as a SMB kirana store or a hardware supplies or goods, or it doesn't matter what you sell. I think that there is this secular movement, or not secular, actually it's a dislocation of people wanting to buy local, and also businesses, SMBs especially, needing to become Atmanirbhar. Because there is, I mean, on one side, it's very exciting to kind of get a lot of business from the e-commerce and aggregator companies. This is correct. I mean, I don't want to decry that channel, but there's also that threat of becoming commoditized from them and losing that customer connect. So I think just like how using WhatsApp, the local businesses are becoming so connected with their let's say catchment base of audience. Technology is not so complex anymore. I mean, what an e-commerce company has done is basically build an app that makes it very convenient for you to kind of, without having to call on the phone or go outside, order some goods and get it delivered. I think even the SMBs should look at adopting it. I mean, they should move with the times. And, I think they could never have imagined, just like the traditional businesses could never have imagined not being in the workplace and people not coming and being face to face. But the reality is people will not want to step out of their home as often to go and browse in a store and order from a store. But they're still looking for goods. So I think if I was an SMB, I would totally get onto this digitized ordering and contactless delivery bandwagon, and that would actually build a stronger, closer connect with the customer. So I mean, this is also the opportunity for MapmyIndia, because we really enable this hyper-local marketplace kind of thing where local businesses can list themselves and connect with consumers nearby. So that's one of the things I would. But of course, I mean, that requires them to digitize their payments. It requires them to digitize inventory, so on and so forth. So, but it's not that expensive anymore, I feel, and it's getting democratized. So why not SMBs? So maybe the kids of the businessmen there can kind of encourage their parents to kind of get onto the digitized bandwagon. And frankly, we are all, I think in India, looking at becoming more DIY, because we don't want to have too many home services. People come in and fix the toilet or like clean up the wall and so on and so forth. I mean, this is great for SMBs who are kind of selling these products. I mean, people would love to buy it and use it. So typically they would go to an e-commerce website. But, if they know that there's somebody nearby who has actually, it's the same human being who you could go to. In Goa, I would go to a hardware store and like buy some equipment and I ask them how to use it. If I can get the same experience even now, I don't think I would go to a antiseptic or like a very impersonal e-commerce website. I'd love to have that customer conversation with a shopkeeper who has the time and is not inundated with 1 million orders a day. So maybe that is something interesting that can come out of this pandemic.
Yeah. Interestingly, what you mentioned is like, because in these months of lockdown, I don't think any of us have stepped into a mall or a big store kind of a thing. We are doing with our mom and pop, the Kirana stores nearby. And I think now, though, of course, it's been a month because of Bangalore having so many cases. So we are ordering online, right? And those it's coming from those small stores nearby. Yeah, you're right. And so it is a different kind of, and we had thought that the Kirana stores were all on its way out. But you see big e-commerce stores partnering with them right now. So yeah, there is this kind of balance. Amit, to you, my question would be like, how can companies still deliver customer delight in these times of the pandemic times?
I'd
Because
like to
safety is the biggest aspect right now, right?
I'd like to build on what Rohan said. Actually, the number of opportunities have actually increased if you change really the worldview of what your business is about and what you're really trying to do. I think it's really about at this point in time not having the same assumptions that you had on the customer and what your belief systems were about on what the customer really expects from you. And trying and making sure that there is enough and clear understanding of what the expectations are today, and they may have changed. And in the absence of that, I think a lot of companies can make mistakes. So first, it's good to know what is the current set of realities that the customer is dealing with. And one thing is to really empathize that, hey, I mean, we could be selling our products and our categories, but for the customer at this point in time, our category is not the most important thing on their minds. They're not necessarily thinking shopping. They're not necessarily thinking leisure. They're not necessarily thinking about building an asset or building a home. I think that sensitivity people need to develop, that the situation right now is far bigger than businesses and transactions. And the moment that empathy sets in, the interactions can become far more human. But to get to the specifics, I would say it is about doing small things. And it's not about, I would say, and there is this new saying in the marketing world, and I'll draw from there, that the new world is about acts, 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 not ads. And that's what this is really about. If you really care about a customer, don't go about beating your drum about what you are doing for them or what are you providing, but start doing a few small things that will then make a difference to their life. So, just some of the examples that I gave you. We didn't have to step out and say, hey, irrespective of which PC brands buyer you are, we will help you. It meant for our team to stretch beyond, but I don't think we were looking for any gains there, but it was the most natural thing to do. There are category customers who are pained, and if we have some spare capacity, can we help them? Or if there are customers who don't know what to buy, can we help them? So I think at this point in time, it is important for businesses to think human and be as human as they can. And if they come across even the smallest of things that they can do, it would go a long way. It's not about big campaigns. It's not about large scale changes, large scale transformation exercises to elevate consumer experience. It's about going back to what we do best, what we know best as human beings, and to do that, hopefully using digital at some stage.
Akshat, you mentioned about this the product when we were talking about what new products and the priority, right, for SMBs. What is the priority right now? So considering that they have limited resources,
Right.
what would you think be the key areas for them to focus and prioritize investments accordingly right now?
So, I mean, if you talk about investments, right? I mean, to make the investment, you need the financing, right? So I mean, it both goes hand in hand, in my opinion. So while they need to definitely make the investment to make their businesses still continue running, so at least, from an infrastructure perspective, from a security perspective, and from enabling this access perspective, I mean, you need to spend on that. Right. The second thing I'd spend on is basically, taking care of your employees and customers, right? As Amit rightly mentioned, right? What's the experience for the customer like? How are they evolving? And can you, as an organization, evolve to cater to your customer, right? Similarly, can you cater to your employees accordingly, right? Somebody's got a kid at home, somebody's got no space at home, somebody's got internet issues, somebody's probably staying in a PG. I mean, how do you be empathetic to your sort of employees and ensure you can spend on them rather than an office space at this point in time, to be able to sort of do that, right? And for that, a lot of businesses need to sort of bolster their finances. So, ensuring they've got the right working capital lines in place. So, for example, I mean, we help a lot of organizations who are getting paid by larger corporates to get paid early, whereas we sort of look at getting the payments from the larger organizations, right? So helping them with immediate cash against invoices that they've got, right? And same for their vendors as well. We can sort of pay their vendors early, and give the organizations extension on those payments. So different ways to sort of make this money available to them from a working capital perspective, which can then in turn be used at all the avenues that I mentioned.
Rohan, you were talking about solving a lot of problems, customer problems, and that's been part of your work. But what and behavior changes that we also spoke about here. What sort of behavioral changes are you seeing in terms of your customers, in terms of how they are reacting to adopting digital?
I think they are extremely open to adopting digital. I think the challenges that we used to face, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, have so slowly just kept whittling away. I mean, I'll give you the example of GPS in trucks and taxis. There was a time when, the drivers used to resist it significantly, that will you be monitoring us and so on and so forth. So they would resist, and hence the SMB or the logistics player would not be able to install the GPS. I think they have also started to realize that there's some very strong benefits of this digital technology, because, in case the vehicle is stolen, in case there's some accident or crime that has happened, they can be located. So I think actually we are seeing strong adoption, and wherever there's resistance, once they start seeing others adopting it, once they start seeing the benefits accrue to them, once they try it out, it's quite a positive story on adoption of digital generally.
Mm-hmm. Just before we wrap up, what has been these unusual times, these unprecedented times, your takeaway from here, your big learnings from these past few months, and what you'll carry now? I think hopefully we'll all carry it forward with us, because I don't know when this is all going to end. Rohan, please. Yes.
I'll say my part to this. I think really it has hit home that how difficult times can get, and everybody should maintain a buffer, and B should, as a business, as an individual, you should live within your means. You should be Atmanirbhar, really. If you can be profitable, please be profitable. I know there is this tension between growing fast and burning money and staying profitable yet growing steadily. To each his own. But in difficult times, being a bit cautious, being a bit conservative can let you tide over these difficult times, unless you have a very strong buffer. So, which you have accumulated for XYZ reasons in the past. So I think that kind of forced Atmanirbharta and forced kind of living within your means is probably the biggest learning. It has kept staying lean, not staying unnecessarily fatty. I think these are things that, again, if you have lesser number of people, maybe you can take lesser number of initiatives. But then, that means the people are fully utilized rather than, having fat and then having to trim it away or cut it away. It's really traumatic. So, these are kind of our learnings, or and it's also the principles on which MapmyIndia has been run for 25 years. We have seen our share of pain, but it could have been much worse had we not kind of kept these in mind from before, without even knowing that Corona would come in, but keeping in mind that rainy days can come in whatever way, shape, or form.
True.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with what Rohan said, and a big thing that we talk about at our end is what doesn't break you will only make you stronger, right? See, I mean, as much as this has been quite a dire situation where we've lost lives, we're going to definitely lose businesses. We've already lost a lot of businesses, and we'll lose more of them, right? But at the end of the day, you have to look at it from a survival of the fittest. If you can survive this, there is definitely light at the end of the tunnel, right? I mean, the business is going to get back to normal. It could take 3 months, 6 months, or 9 months, or even a year. But if you can survive, persevere, the fruit is there for the taking, right? And organizations need to ensure that they conserve their energy, their cash, their resources in a manner to be able to last themselves. Profitability, as Rohan said, very, very important in this environment, because funding or cash is very difficult to come by. So from that perspective, stick with it is going to be my biggest sort of advice to SMBs. If you can be there, you can sort of reap the fruits.
What about you, Amit?
So I mean, Dipti, Rohan and Akshat are experts at this. I can just give you my views. I would say less from a corporate standpoint or a company standpoint. I think Rohan and Akshat have covered it quite comprehensively. Maybe as a as an individual, I think what I've realized certainly is, as Rohan said, to live within your means, and it's not that difficult to.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all realized how much little we need. And I actually stepped into a mall after a long time for the first time, and I could immediately sense how quick I was to take the wallet out of my pocket. And when it's not there, you need little. So that's certainly one. The second is, as Akshat said, I'm a follower of the game of cricket, like most of us are. It's like a really, really bad session in a test match. Imagine England swinging conditions. Play the 2 sessions out. Hopefully there'll be sunshine, and if you've played them well, you will get many more sessions ahead. It's important to know your game at this stage. Know what your strengths and weaknesses are, and keep an eye on what's changing, and those who will make that change quicker than others, stand to gain.
True. So with that, thank you so much, and let's hope that there's sunshine, lots of it. Right now it's kind of gloomy and raining here in Bangalore, and let's hope for sunshine everywhere. And thank you so much, Amit, Rohan and Akshat, for taking time out and sharing your insights. Thanks a lot.